Welcome to the Retzel Health Law Hotspot. Health Law Hotspot is a podcast for physicians and health professionals that covers the legal issues and trends that affect the healthcare industry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Health Law Hotspot. I'm Ericka Adler, shareholder and leader of the healthcare practice at Retzel and Andrus. Today on the Health Law Hotspot, we're talking with Treasa Moran, financial advisor at Anchor Point Wealth Advisors, and we're talking about a really interesting topic, which is the financial aspect of both money management and investing, and some of the things that physicians, dentists, and other healthcare providers really need to consider when they're doing their financial planning and understanding how their emotions might impact some of those decisions. So, welcome, Tressa. Great to have you.
Hi, Erica. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. So, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in this particular aspect of financial planning?
Yeah, thank you. So, my journey in finance started in studying undergrad and falling in love with economics and application of theory to real world. Found myself working for a number of large money firms throughout my career. And what I found as I transitioned over the years that, what you learn in school, all the practical knowledge, it does not translate as well when you are talking about real world working with individuals and helping them with their money. What I found, regardless of somebody's income level and wealth, the emotions play a huge part. So it's not just what we know. It's the emotions, the subconscious that really impacts a lot of those decisions that we make.
Okay, that makes sense. So, what are some of the themes that you have found with physicians and healthcare providers specifically when it comes to managing their finances?
Yeah, I work with a lot of physicians and other healthcare professionals, and one of the themes that bodes very well for healthcare professionals in the financial field, investing their money is they're very used to being disciplined. Hard work, putting yourself through medical school. Those folks know how to sacrifice, and a lot of those traits that serve them well getting through school will serve them well as they're investing through their career. But as I said, the emotions of money creep in. A lot of times, some of the themes I'll see are folks that might be first generation wealth. So somebody that didn't grow up with a lot of money. One of the things we find, and actually in my childhood experience, my father faced a similar thing where you're breaking out of wealth your wealth ceiling, if you will, and so the skills that need to take you from a financial comfort zone, are quite different than just that hard work and saving, thinking of saving money. Your emotions, if you're not aware of it, will get in the way. A good example might be folks that win the lottery. A lot of times, somebody that comes into sudden money, they actually don't do a good job of saving. If you don't get a check in with your emotions, unfortunately, that money might go right out the door. So emotions are going to play a key piece in this.
Right. And I would think with physicians and other healthcare professionals, their emotions would run the gamut. You've got some young physicians who it could be the first time they're really starting to get some money. Although I know that a lot of financial planners will be at the residency programs and medical schools telling them you got to start planning right ahead of time. For them, they're looking forward to finally having a paycheck. They also many times really need to think about the loans that need to get paid off. But at the same time, many of them might be buying their first house or their first cars or relocating with a spouse. So they have a lot of kind of warring, desires and needs that they need to think about. And, on the other end, we've got some older healthcare professionals who may have been earning some money for quite a period of time and maybe have been enjoying life, but not necessarily planning, for retirement as well as they should have. And so their mindset never really quite switched between the young doctor happy to have a check and, oh my goodness, I'm getting older now. I really need to think about it. And then I always try and bring up planning when I'm talking with doctors when it comes to asset protection. And by that, I do mean partially that if you're sued and, creditors try to come after that money, but I also mean protecting your family so that if something happens to you, that you're protected. And that could be death, obviously. We want to make sure that, and I'm not an estate planning lawyer, we want to make sure that you're well prepared, but also disability insurance, which is a really big deal. And a lot of young physicians and other healthcare professionals in particular feel quite invincible. They've been through medical school, they're surgeons, they're practitioners, whatever it is, and nothing's going to happen to them and they're fine. But one of the saddest things that I come across are physicians who do become ill or disabled and literally have spent so many years becoming doctors that they don't really know how to do anything else or they're not open to alternative careers. And so I always try and direct them very early on to talk to financial planners to really think about these kinds of things that are very, in some ways, physician specific in terms of mindset. And I don't know if you come across those issues as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'd say, historically the industry that I'm in, the financial planning investment world, it was very driven on investments. In a lot of my career and the learning, you're just focused on how to build that portfolio. What are those asset classes? How could you generate alpha for your clients? Did you beat your benchmark? But as things evolve and have changed, the planning work is the most important. And to your point, when I'm working with a client, it's having that client build their advisory team, their personal board of directors, which includes your attorney, which includes getting insurance protection, which includes an accountant, and whether it's a coach, professionally as you're going through your career, joining other supportive groups, and it's all extremely important. And I think the other piece of the work that I'm doing with clients that I think is very important is value-based discovery. So it's not just asking about, in those discovery meetings when you're trying to find out, that the individual is looking to build your wealth, right? That's typically someone younger in their career. They're looking to perhaps, how to best pay down that debt. How do they get started? And as you noted, getting closer to retirement, do I have enough? So two differing things, but, the theme being, I think if folks can get clear with who they are, what is their life purpose, in addition to just the financial side and being a physician, at the end of the day, what really matters to you. So getting clear on that, and some of the questions that more and more financial professionals are doing, that's the good news out there. I'm just one of many professionals that are asking the questions, what was your history with money like? Can give us some insight into decisions you're making. Do you feel stressed out over money? I recall being at a physicians conference, and I was presenting on this topic of just financial empowerment. And after my session, I had a physician come up very excited that she, had all of her numbers down. But what she shared, which was interesting, was that she didn't always know her numbers when she actually went through a divorce. And one of the questions that was asked of her was, how much do you make, by her attorney? And she just didn't even know the answer. And, there can be a lot of shame in, why don't we know these things? And, I'd say the first step is just getting some awareness. Sometimes it is a triggering event that happens, a death, a divorce, or, as you say, a disability that can happen. But it's never too late to start that process early and get going. So, for those that are younger in their career, learning about these topics, I'd urge anyone to start at a young age to get started with it. It's very empowering to, um, the more you know, it's extremely empowering.
I definitely agree. What are some ways that you work with clients to assist them to understand their psychology of money then? How do you actually tease that out?
Yeah, and it's, money, we're very vulnerable surrounding money. And so, how much do you make, and asking all these questions. I'd say the role that I play is not too dissimilar of a physician of starting that process of discovery. I'm asking the financial questions versus the health checkup questions, right? So there's definitely similarities there. But like I said, some of the value-based work, Brad Klontz is one practitioner out there that has built tons of wealth for financial professionals to utilize. Some of those discovery questions are, what was your early relationship with money like? For couples, it might be asking, how do you each define your level of financial success? You come to the table with different ideas of what that means. What is important to you, not just what does the life look like for you, financially, not just the dollar amounts. And understanding that can help when roadblocks come up, whether it's I don't like paying attention to the numbers, or they're stressing me out. If you have some of that awareness, awareness is really the key to unlocking a healthy relationship with money. It starts with, with that, things like, are you a spender or a saver? Just getting a sense for what an individual thinks, about their own habits. We know these things, and the role I play is to help facilitate that discussion, that can unlock a lot of, I'd say, insight by going through the process, and helping you to really build that plan, as your next step.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what happens when you're going through that and you kind of come across someone who doesn't actually have a handle on their finances, and they start to feel upset that they might be behind, or maybe they're embarrassed or ashamed that they are, haven't planned like all their colleagues? And, how do you address that?
Yeah, it's frequent, and I'd say again, it's shining a light on things. We know, psychology teaches us that as we avoid things, there can be some relief. It's like the boyfriend coming to you, or your husband saying, "We need to talk." Oh, we'll talk later. We push that off. The problem
Right.
is, well, initially you actually get a relief. Your emotions feel, actually rise because you're not dealing with things. The problem is, the more we push things off, the worse they get. And so, to address things, you will feel a spike of unrest and emotional upset. The good news is that by dealing with those issues over time, that stress actually does go down. And so, there's a story of a monk that goes to the up into the forest to pray, and it has been up for several days on the mountain, and finally he's very tired. It's 3 days later, he's coming down, and he sees in front of him a snake, and what appears to be a snake. He freaks out, gets all sorts of anxiety, finally, lights his match so he can see, and that snake is actually just a rope. And so, so too with, a lot of this awareness, it's shining the light on something and dispelling, you're able to take it piece by piece apart, but putting that light on it is really the first step.
That makes sense. So, what are the steps then that you can take to really review your finances and figure out if you're on track, or if you need to do more? Well, what are you recommending?
Yeah, I'll tell from two different perspectives. So from someone that, is a new resident, right? Somebody that's recently completed school. And for both categories, I'd say know your numbers. I mean, you're going to have a lot of debt. Know what that debt is. Know what your interest rates are for that debt. Know how much you're making. Spend time knowing what your budget is. These are some of the basics, but how much are my fixed expenses? That's key. Variable are ones that you can change. Fixed are going to be your rent, all those things, the interest rate for your loan, and the keys to building wealth are spending less than we make and saving. And the best advice that I think we can give out there for younger residents are, as you do progress into getting those higher salaries, try to live like a resident for a little bit longer. You've sacrificed this long. If you can keep doing it, you can pay down that debt. And there's a beauty in my term called compound interest. The more you invest, the more that grows. And, you can easily be a millionaire, in 20 years or so with that discipline that you have. So someone that's a little bit, say somebody that's getting closer to retirement, a different scenario where you've been working, your debt is now paid down. You may have multiple real estate holdings. You're used to a high salary. Hopefully, you've been living under your means. Again, the key thing is knowing what your numbers are, knowing where all of your accounts are. This might be a time to start consolidating to make things easier. Again, it's looking at, did you get your estate plan done? Insurance, for the younger folks and folks that are getting closer to retirement. Did you think about long-term care coverage? But the first thing would be knowing what your numbers are and starting to get organized. And then, you can, again, you may be working with somebody, an advisor over all these years. Maybe you haven't, but we'll talk a little bit about, how do you find, what are things that you can do? And a lot of it you can do on your own. And I would recommend for folks earlier on in their career, learn enough so that you can make some good decisions on your own. Be financially empowered by getting educated on the basics.
Oh, that makes sense. And one thing I'll add to that is that a lot of doctors sign agreements for large signing bonuses, or they might enter into recruitment agreements. And there are lots of strings attached to those things. So if you're going to be trying to figure out your financial position, you also need to understand the commitments that you made and how some decisions you make about relocating, moving, terminating employment, etc., can trigger repayment obligations. So you think you have everything figured out, but oh yeah, I forgot. I'm going to have to give back $50,000, $100,000, whatever it is. So also, that's why I think it's really important to have a lawyer involved along with your financial team. They should be communicating and kind of making sure that you're being protected on all sides. So sometimes I have like the savviest doctors who just completely forgot that they're going to owe money if they move, or let's say they decide to leave their employment and they forgot that if you don't leave exactly the right time, you lose some huge bonus amount that you would have gotten, right? That you were counting on, that you planned for. Maybe it's to put money into your kid's college fund at the end of the year or whatever it is. They think the money's coming their way, and then simply because they didn't understand their contract, they didn't do things properly and they lost a huge amount. So really, all these financial aspects really tightly fit with your contract as well. So just wanted
Yeah,
to say that you have
excellent
to
point.
understand everything. So, all right. So what about somebody who suddenly has a family member who dies and leaves them a ton of money, or they come into money in some other way that they didn't expect? What advice would you have for somebody who's might luckily be facing something like that right now?
Yeah, that's a great a great question. And I think it gets back to what is important to you, and doing some of that values based exploration, and thinking about what is important to me. If you've been working with an advisor, great, and that person should be able to help guide you. If you haven't, you may want to consider working with somebody, and depending on the number, right, there are different providers that are going to assist you at different parts in your career, selling a practice and making several multiples of millions, might be appropriate for one advisor over another. So they say not to make any quick decisions on with money when you do come into it, because you want some time to deal with those emotions. Handouts from family members or friends. And you hear these stories of lottery winners that, when we're talking millions and millions of dollars, and it can destroy lives. So, getting clear with what does money mean to you. It's not going to solve all your problems. And what do you value? All those things are important, but definitely building a strong team around you of attorneys, accountants, financial advisors, and think about what 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 do you want your legacy to be? What can money do that is in alignment with who you are and what matters to you?
Okay, great. So one kind of getting near the end here, really important question that I'm sure is on everybody's mind is the markets are a little crazy right now, right? And there's lots of scary news out there. Um, Everybody is uncertain about what's going to happen. As I'm saying this, there's big tariffs out there. The markets have plunged a little bit. So people who have invested their 401k or whatever it is are seeing numbers they don't like so much. What is an investor to do these days with that kind of uncertainty out there? Is it safer to just not invest? Do we just, kind of sit through it for the long run? That's what my husband says. He's like, we're not retiring soon, so we just have to, sit through this, and in the long run, it'll be okay. But, as a professional, what do you tell young or not so young doctors that are kind of freaked out about what's going on?
Yeah, it is. It's uncertain. It's a lot of uncertainty, and I think meeting folks where they are, and again, why are you so freaked out? Understanding what's behind the emotions. But the key to investing is really staying the course, and it's understanding what is your objective for your money, what is your time horizon, and what is your risk tolerance. We have different buckets of money. Typically there's a retirement bucket, 401k assets that are pre-tax dollars or after tax, but they're designated for retirement. So that money is typically long term. And when we go through periods like this, the worst thing to do is to really panic, take that money out. And one of the biggest reasons being that we can't time when the market does correct. I mean, we've seen this year to date, markets were down over 17% in the S&P 500, and we've made up a lot of ground. The value style of investing is actually up this year to date period. Growth is still behind, but the bottom line being you can't time the market. Time in the market matters much more than timing the market. So try to stay the course, knowing that in any given year, there's going to be a lot of volatility. And by staying invested, you'll be much better off. But if it is a short-term fund, if it's a money that's in your taxable account, say you're looking to buy a home in 2 years, that's money that, given your objective of needing it within 2 years, you don't want to have that exposed. You want to have that in a money market and something that is earning interest and not going to lose capital. So it depends a lot on what is your objective, your time horizon, and your risk tolerance. It goes back to those three things, but try to stay the course and, talk to your advisor. Hang in there.
Yeah, I think it's tough whether you're a doctor or not, young, old, there's uncertainty and it makes people nervous. And I think, all we can do is kind of hope for the best and hope that we're getting, good guidance, right? So speaking of that, how do you recommend somebody find, a financial planner that meets their particular goals and needs? I mean, some people just invest, they don't really talk you through your life goals and really kind of your family and your needs and become a partner, so to speak. And, so the different kinds of people out there. How can a doctor listening to this find the right, financial advisor for them?
Yeah, great question. And I say that a great starting place, and I'll give a plug for the White Coat Investor and Jim Dahl's work for physicians. It's just he has a website, a blog, a podcast. What I really like about his work is that he's very focused on physicians, and whether you're just starting out, just graduating, further on in your career, he's a great place to get you started on the basics. Everybody should, it just, we should have a basics knowledge of finance. I'm a big believer in the education component, love doing seminars and get folks educated, but get yourself educated first, and then depending on where you are in your cycle, you may want to work with somebody that does flat fee work. So there are advisors out there that will do a one-time check in with you. If you're a resident, don't have much money yet, getting started, it may be worth it to pay somebody an hourly rate, a project fee, just to make sure you get started, setting up your Roth accounts. What, are you paying down your debt? Do you have your budget under control? Just some of those basics. As you progress in your career, and have more assets, you're going to want to have more professionals around you. I have the experience of working for a lot of the big global banks in my career, and then moving to the independent channel in this space. But what I'll say is, there are good advisors in every space. A great place to start is asking other friends and colleagues, who do they use, who do they recommend, getting educated on your own. You may be a do-it-yourselfer and enjoy it, and that's perfectly fine. As things get more complex, you get closer to retirement, you may want to look under the hood more, things like Roth conversions, the taxes in retirement, money that you'll be taking out of that 401k, say, if you had it for many years, estate planning issues. There can be some more complexity that you may not want to deal with, and so finding somebody, again, it's a very personal relationship, somebody that you click with, that has worked with folks that are like you. It's a very personal decision, but get knowledge, get educated. Folks like the White Coat Investor are a great place to start, and kind of go from there.
Perfect. I think that's really helpful. And hopefully everybody listening out there will feel free to reach out to Treasa if you have any questions about anything that she has discussed here, and if you're looking for guidance. And any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Just hang in there with the markets and volatility, and it's a long-term game of investing, but the discipline that served you well getting through medical school will serve you well in your investing world as well.
Great. All right. Well, thanks to Treasa Moran from Anchor Point Wealth Advisors. And this has been the Health Law Hotspot. Please reach out if you have any questions. And otherwise, we'll see you next time. And feel free to check out any of our other episodes at ralaw.com. Thanks so much.
The Retzel Health Law Hotspot is made available by the firm and its attorneys for educational purposes and to provide general information, not to provide specific legal advice. Use of the Retzel Health Law Hotspot does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and the firm or any of its attorneys. The Retzel Health Law Hotspot should not be used as a substitute for competent legal advice, and you should contact an attorney in your state about any legal needs or questions you may have.